Would you like to introduce yourself, please?
So I am Demetrius Triarius. I practice sorcery for 5 or 6 years, depending on how you count. And my primary goals and practices are Slavic magic and Glyphotic magic. I also practice a little bit of Norse magic, and my goal is to make occult approachable for people with disabilities. And this is a short introduction of myself. Yeah, really.
Cool. What can you tell us about what and how did you get into these arts and sciences?
So technically, I will not call occult a science, because science has strict rules and procedures, and magic is varying from culture to culture, largely, so I will call it expression of the soul which brings upon the results. But how I got into magic, it's a little bit complex story. I studied history since a really young age, and I am studying history at university right now. And through studying history, I realized that in ancient cultures, magic was really a big thing. So I definitely was suspicious about something behind all of those practices, that there is underlying reality between and beyond what we see. But I actually started practicing after my suicide attempt, because during my first suicide attempt, I had paranormal experience, and I also had multiple paranormal experiences with the shadow people, which first forced me to question the solidity of reality when it happened. But paranormal experience I had during my suicide attempt actually convinced me in reality of sorcery. Few months later, I started tapping into the occult. I read the Book of the Law by Aleister Crowley, and I started practicing demon magic. My first patron in demon magic was demonic king Paimon. He was the most prominent spirit in my early practice. So I still work with King Paimon and practice his forms of demon magic. But right now I am focused more on Slavic magic and aspects of demon magic, which are compatible with Slavic system. So that's my short overview of things I do.
Awesome. What can you tell us about Slavic magic, and how do you use it, and how does it work with your praxis?
So what is Slavic magic? So first, Slavic magic we can define as sorcery system developed within earlier Slavic cultures before arrival of Christianity. Christianity arrived in Slavic lands from 10th to 13th century. That was Christianization of the Slavs in that period. And Slavic magic is kind of different than other forms of magic we are familiar with, due to the like Norse magic or Celtic magic, because Slavic people have their own unique system, and Slavic magic seems to be more primal. Slavic gods seem to be less civilized than Celtic gods or, for example, Nordic gods. They are more fitting description of them would be something like primal energies of nature than if we want to describe them as gods, because they are really raw and really primal. So working with the Slavic system should be based around like nature worship and practicing in nature. But since I cannot practice in nature due to physical constraints dealing with my health, I had to actually find a way to practice in a closed area. But it has its own flaws, practicing Slavic magic indoors. Because let me give you an example. For example, if you want to connect with Morana, Slavic goddess of winter and death, the best way to contact Morana is actually to go on the place when there is a snow or where there is a cold and call her there. But if you, for example, cannot call her on the snow because you live in part of the world where there is no snow, for example, then you should make area as cold as possible before summoning Morana. And also, Slavic magic has a lot to do with the fairies, aka we call fairies Vile, and it has also a lot to do with the dragon spirits and the work with ancestors. So Slavic magic is really its own thing, and I think this is a really interesting topic because a lot of your listeners are probably completely unfamiliar with the Slavic magic. So, yeah.
So what are some Slavic deities that you work with, and what can you tell us about Slavic cosmology, Slavic mythology? What did they believe? Who did they worship? Who are the beings of power within the Slavic current?
So technically, what I came to conclusion while investigating is that we have like this weird idea that somehow pre-Abrahamic religions were dogmatic. Like, most of Norse pagans believed that all of the Germanic tribes venerated the same gods in the same hierarchy, with the same importance given to each deity. And I found it not to be the case. So, the gods were common for the entire people. Like, all Slavic nations venerated more or less the same important gods. You had local gods, but unfortunately we don't have local gods preserved. We have only more important deities preserved. But how they relate and how they interact, for example, and who is the most important deity, it varies depending on a region. So, for example, in the region I live in, Serbia, Dajbog, the god of the sun, was probably the most venerated deity. In the Baltic lands where the Slavs lived, in modern Germany, Svetovich was the most venerated deity. In parts of Russia, Mokosh was the most venerated deity. So who was the most venerated and revered depended on a region, and Slavic worldview wasn't dogmatic, so cosmology changed depending on a region too, but there is some common thread we can find. So you have three worlds: Yav, which is the world of the mortals; Nav, which is the underworld; and Prav, which is the heavenly realm, right? And you have those three realms more or less in all variations of the Slavic mythology. You'll have also the world tree. Many people familiar with Norse system will definitely find many similarities. However, there is no clear doctrine of certain number of worlds in Slavic lore, either because they didn't exist, which is also a possibility, or such detailed lore isn't preserved due to the ages, because Slavic mythology wasn't written down in the same way Norse mythology was. But you have other advantage when you study Slavic mythology, because Slavic peoples preserved much more pagan customs than Germanic or Celtic peoples. And the amount of pre-Christian customs preserved in Slavic cultures is absolutely ridiculous. So you can use those customs in order to understand the pre-Christian worldview more, but you have other difficulty, which is finding which customs are related to which deity. Because Slavic deity is morphed into saints, and the difficulty is finding which deity morphed into which saint. So there are different kinds of difficulties when you deal with Slavic mythology than when you deal with Norse or Celtic one. But they definitely believed in the natural forces, and they definitely believe that nature is a living being. And the most prominent god in my practice is Chernobog, which is the god of winter, hardship, and darkness, and his wife Morana, who is the goddess of winter and death. I also work with Svetovid, the god of light and spiritual insight. And I also work with the fairy spirits, and with the Dajbog in his Chthonic aspect as the god of the underworld. So those are the gods I work with. But generally, if you are trying to find some legitimate written down Slavic cosmogony and theology, most of those things are not legit. They are actually written by the Russian romantics and romanticists in 19th century. And the product of my study and conclusion of my study is that there was no unified Slavic cosmogony. It varied from region to region, but the gods were more or less the same everywhere. But how they relate varied from place to place and from tribe to tribe. And there was no supreme deity. Every tribe has its own most revered god. The hierarchy of gods wasn't clearly defined, which makes sense because we talk about pretty tribal societies without a lot of developed hierarchy. So, does it make sense what I'm saying to you? Do you actually understand what I'm trying to say?
So this is more of a hierarchical system. It wasn't like the Abrahamics or like the more patriarchal societies where you have this one god that controls everything and you have these other like rival gods. It's like each god had its own like place and they were all important.
Yes, and who is the supreme god varies from place to place. You know, if you read the folk songs of the Balkans, the supreme god was definitely Triglav. But if you read the folk songs of, for example, Russia, the creator god is Svarog, for example. And it shows that each tribe or group of tribes had its own most important deity. And there was no clear hierarchy. And every tribe revered the protector of the tribe the most. And you have the similar custom in South Slavic lands today, especially among the Serbs and Bulgarians. So, saints replaced the gods, literally. The stories attributed to the gods became attributed to the saints. And that's the reason why you have the saint of lighting, or the saint of the dead, or the saint of the waters, etc., etc. Like, you have ridiculous legends which show that many saints are actually just pagan gods in disguise. For example, Saint Elijah is known to kill people with lightning, throw the explosive apples, ride on the heavens with his chariot, and fight the giant earth serpent. So it's not definitely the depiction of Saint Elijah from the Bible. It's Mask of Peril, the Slavic god of the sky. So each family has its own saint, which is celebrated once a year, and then each region also has its own saint. And all saints are venerated by certain families and certain regions as the main, aka supreme ones. So, if we understand that all of the gods were actually declared supreme by the tribes who venerated them, then we realize that there was no organized, clear hierarchy in the Slavic system. Every god has its own place, and all of the gods were revered when the time was necessary for the deity. And depending on what you need, you will call different deities to aid you. And there was no clear hierarchy of the gods.
So what can you tell us about Chernobog and his wife?
So what I can say about Chernobog is that majority of Chernobog's portrayal in modern occultism comes from two sources. One source is Majarayan Cabal, written down by Samus Greatwood, and another source is Russian Romanticism of 19th century. Russian Romanticism and Majarayan Cabal have really different take on Chernobog than traditional Slavic take on the deity. So, in order to understand how Chernobog was viewed, the only thing we can do is to see how devil was viewed. Because in my personal experience, Chernobog and Morana were not able to fit in modern Christian religion. So they didn't morph into saints, like Perun, or Mokosh, or Lada, or Moran, for example. They remained outside of Christianity. They were not Christianized. So they were demonized, per se. And Chernobog was actually not necessarily demonic adversarial figure. He was god of darkness and hardship and winter, but theogony of old Slavs was not dualistic. So Chernobog wasn't seen as some evil deity. He was actually wildly venerated in Christian times, in pre-Christian and even in Christian times. How we know this is because we have a lot of place names named after him, and we also have a lot of legends related to the devil which show that the devil is Chernobog. Because devil in Slavic folklore has a lot of non-Christian attributes. For example, he tends to protect the people who call him. He always holds his word. He tends to be really skilled in healing people and bringing knowledge to people and teaches people stuff. And from that depiction we see that this depiction of the devil, aka Chernobog, we have in Slavic lands, is not necessarily the same as modern Russian Rodneveri depiction or Majaraya Cabal depiction. Chernobog is not evil deity. He is simply the deity of hardship and winter. But he can also protect his initiates, and he can give a lot of knowledge and information which is useful and initiated to numerous mysteries, which really transcend anything which was known to him in modern English take on him. Because he really isn't known as 100% evil deity to his old Slavic followers and to his followers in Slavic lands today. He is really dark deity, but he has creative and destructive aspects. And lore we know traditionally about Chernobog is kind of different from the lore you will see in Majarayan Cabal. There are 4 aspects of Chernobog I am aware of in Slavic tradition. One aspect of him is Chernobog as giant serpent or black dragon. Another aspect of him is Chernobog as the lame devil and the guardian of knowledge.
As
and
the what?
Third aspect,
I'm sorry. As the what devil?
As the lame devil.
Lame.
Like
How?
He's known as the lame black demonic figure with the golden key in his hand and a lot of gold. But he is also able to shapeshift in a terrifying monster, and he is also able to appear as a terrifying warrior. But this terrifying warrior form of him, like, it's still him, it's still the same god under different facts. But this terrifying warrior form of him is like more present in modern Russian revivalism. Traditional forms of him I am able to find and utilize in my sorcery are Chernobog as the lame devil, Chernobog as the dragon, and Chernobog as the monstrous creature. So those are the forms of him I was able to reach. I am also able to work with him as a black warrior, which is the aspect of him revealed through Majoraian Cabal and modern Russian pagan revivalism. But this form of him is not form of him I am attracted to, and I think this form of him really presents him in a really limited manner. There are also some legends preserved among the Bogomils and the Vlachs. If you don't know who Bogomils are, Bogomils were ancient Christian sects which thrived in the Balkans for some time, and they were eventually dealt with. Actually, Catars in France were partially influenced by the Bogomils from the Balkans, because Catars in France were partially founded by refugees from Balkan Peninsula after Bogomils were harshly persecuted in the middle of 13th century. So these sects believed in dualistic worldview, and Chernobog was kind of seen as being who opposes the Christian God, as a counter-creator, right? But this is much later take on Chernobog, which is kind of distant from his original Slavic polytheistic roots. So this aspect of Chernobog as counter-creator definitely can be tapped into, but I prefer to work more with the aspects of Chernobog I am able to understand and know about from Slavic lore in my area. I am not so much interested in those later takes of this divinity.
So how is he dark? Dark like the void or cosmic darkness? And what about the winter and hardships?
So here is the thing. Different names of different divinity literally bring forth the different aspects of this divinity. In my experience, many people will disagree, and everybody has the right to disagree and share their experience. I see Chernobog and Morana as dark nature spirits. They definitely relate to the darkness of the void, because darkness of the void is present within everything. But I have the best results when I approach them as really, really dark nature spirits. And if I approach them this way, I have the best results. Some people like to approach him as an anti-cosmic devil, an anti-cosmic destroyer, but honestly, that's not my approach. People have right to approach him whatever they wanna, but I can share with you my experience. In my opinion, he is deeply connected to dark aspects of nature. He is deeply connected to dark nature spirits, and he is deeply connected to dark ancestral spirits. He can teach you almost all forms of magic you know, but he will teach you those forms of magic in an orthodox way. He thinks beyond limitations we imposed upon sorcery through our own limited human minds. He is really something incomprehensible, and he definitely represents one of the older spiritual creatures there are. I am definitely not competent to talk about his other aspects, which I didn't experience, so I tend to focus on his traditional Slavic forms more. But I am definitely aware that he is something much older and much beyond any limitations we can impose upon him. And that he is not purely destructive or malevolent or evil deity. He can be extremely creative and destructive. And he can also be extremely knowledgeable and useful to the sorcerer. And I think we should approach Chernobog as our ally and friend, and somebody who is willing to help us evolve. We should approach him respectfully, but we shouldn't fear him, because it is really powerful and mighty deity worthy of respect. And what are some other things you want to know about him?
Do you have any experience with the black dragon aspect?
So technically, with Black Dragon aspect, I called that aspect once, and it seems to be difficult to approach. It seems to be more primal and difficult to deal with. So I definitely don't recommend this aspect of him for beginners. I think we should start with more like friendly, humane forms of him.
And what
This aspect of the dragon is not necessarily dangerous, but it is difficult to approach and comprehend.
Right. Is it very... Okay, so what can you tell us about his association with winter and hardships? Because when you say winter and hardships, I think of a Saturnian type of deity, but this is obviously older, and we're not just talking about planets here, we're talking about forces of the cosmos.
So technically, if you want a really painful and dark Saturnian influence, Morana is spirit you should call. So his wife, his consort, Morana is the spirit you should call. Of course, Morana definitely transcends planets and shit like that. She is just like Chernobog, primal energy of nature, which comes in many forms and aspects. But if we talk about Chernobog as the god of hardship, he tends to create fuckery in life of his devotees, like little harsh tests they can overcome in order to strengthen them. But he can also really protect from harm more effectively than many other spirits or deities. So, he is god of hardship in a sense that he brings hardship, but he also protects from hardship, and teaches you how to surpass hardship and learn from it. But him as god of winter, I see it more as a guideline when and in which part of the year you can call him more effectively. So of course, gods are the energies of nature, and they are beyond our limitations, so you can call Chernobog whenever you want to call him. But his presence is definitely stronger during winter than during the other seasons. So I see this association with him and winter more like a guideline than like limitation put upon him. Because he is definitely something much broader and powerful than physical snow.
Yes. So when you say he creates hardships for his devotees, I think of like a trickster god. So is he in any way like Loki to the Norse people? But there is a purpose also to these tests, because he can protect you from great adversaries. So these tests are good because, you know, he may fuck your life up, but once you've passed that, like nothing smaller can harm you.
So here is the thing. I don't see Chernobog as a trickster god, because trickster gods and trickster spirits tend to lie. But Chernobog is actually really honest, and he doesn't lie. Even if in his lore, he is said to be really honest spirit, which always holds his word. So I wouldn't call him a trickster spirit. He definitely creates hardship, but not in a way enemy creates hardship. He creates hardship in the same way military trainer will create hardship for his cadets, or teacher will create hardship for his students in order to prepare them for the life ahead. So he is more like a trainer than he is adversary. I don't see him as hostile to humanity. Everything he does, which can be extremely destructive, is actually for the benefit of the world. He tries to create necessary hardship in the world in order to make world a better place. Because according to him, hardship is necessary for the man and everything around man. Hardship is necessary for nature to function and for the life to prosper. So he represents adversity necessary for continuation of life. Because life will cease to exist if there is no hardship and if there is no adversity.
I agree with that. Do you have any like specific examples of how he like creates harsh circumstances, or just things just happen, or does he like have you do like a lot of like literal like push-ups, pull-ups,
So both of
exercise,
those things
physical
are true.
exercise is part of
So-
devotion to him?
So he literally forces his devotees to strengthen themselves wherever they are weak. So if you are weak physically, he'll push you physically. If you are weak mentally, he'll push you mentally. If you are weak spiritually, he'll push you spiritually. A lot of small unfortunate events will happen. For example, your phone will break a bit for no reason. Or some people will try to fuck with you for no reason. Or your finance will have small downturn for no reason. But all of those things are here to teach you. He will never deliberately ruin your life to the point of no return just for his enjoyment. He really has a good way to determine what kind of adversity you need to evolve. And he is definitely not your enemy or your adversary. He just trains you for better life, for better existence. And what I noticed is that Chernobog really isn't mysterious. If you ask him for concrete advice, he will give you concrete advice. But this concrete advice will usually be a little bit painful. But it will definitely solve your problem more quickly than other spirits who either tend to be cryptic or tend to give less efficient but more pleasant advice. He's really straight to the point.
I like that. I like directness. I don't have time for cryptic or like messages that I have to decipher. I like just get straight to the point. Very, very awesome. Could you again just expose some of like the false misrepresentations that certain lodges and people that misrepresent him as Satan or the destructive devil? What you just said doesn't sound anything like that at all.
So here is the thing. People love to be edgy.
Yeah.
And people also love to fit everything into Abrahamic paradigm, unconsciously or consciously. Because if you throw out the Abrahamic paradigm, you also realize that our society, which is based on dualism, is complete bullshit. So, here is the thing. Chernobog cannot be the devil, because he comes from non-dualistic culture. And in non-dualistic culture, demons and devils do not exist. Okay, in old Slavic religion there was no devil, there was no God, there was no good angels and evil demons. Every spiritual energy can be creative and destructive, depending on how you use it. Every deity, every bog, every god. Bog, which is old word for God in Slavic and Iranic languages, and it literally means power. So, Chernobog literally means black power. So, black power can be used however you want to use it. And you can use it for creation, you can use it for destruction. It depends really on the sorcerer. So, Chernobog is definitely not some evil devil with a pitchfork who tortures people for his own amusement, or hates humanity or anything like that. He is really divinity, a pagan deity, with soft and harsh side, and I think we shouldn't demonize him and present him as the devil, because old Slavic lore doesn't describe him this way, Slavic folk tales doesn't describe him this way, and he doesn't behave like evil devil who want to destroy everything. So I think his misrepresentation by Russian Romanticism and other modern lodges is really unnecessary. And we should approach this deity just like we approach other deities in polytheistic communities. With respect and caution, but also willingness to work and interact. Because really Chernobog is not our enemy. He is there to help us like any other deity. And also empower himself.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's just Kaimatica. There's matter and there's dark matter in the universe, you know, and it's not at war with each other. It just is. I mean, they're both required for physical existence.
And like the only thing which will determine with which Bog or God or power you should work with is your reaction to this kind of power. So, for example, I have a negative reaction to warlike Martian energy. And I also have negative reaction to energy like Perun, which is the thunder god. Like I don't like thunder gods. So I don't work with them, right? So if I want something creative, instead of using thunder gods, for example, I can simply use more creative side of Chernobog. And by the way, in all Slavic religion, heavenly gods like Perun or Svarog or Dajbog can also be extremely destructive. So, for example, Perun can kill innocent people in his wrath. So the god of the heavens and god of the order, which rides upon the firmament in his chariot, can also kill innocent people in his wrath. So it is completely non-dualistic religion, and there is no need to put the deity from non-dualistic paradigm into some dualistic paradigm and make the devil out of it.
Cool. Are there any Slavic deities that is there any Slavic deities that they like synchronistically they're like synchronized with Klepothian archetypes, or like is there any like Slavic deities that could be in the Citra Ara structure?
So yeah, like Slavic deities are not part of the Citra Ara structure, but there are definitely certain deities which synchronize with the Qliphothic spirits more than others. So, if you wanna mix Slavic sorcery with the Qliphot, I think Chernobog and Morana are spirits to start. Chernobog and Morana should be approached together, because Morana, if approached on her own, doesn't tolerate any other deities. But if you approach Morana and Chernobog together, since they are consort and mate, husband and wife, not necessarily husband and wife, but they are pair. They are always mentioned with relation to one another. In almost all of the sources. Like almost every source which mentions Morana mentions Chernobog alongside, and almost every source which mentions Chernobog mentions Morana alongside. We talk about Slavic sources. So they are paired, and they work together. So starting with them and working with them together is compatible with the Qliphot. Working with Dajbog, the father of the werewolves, is also compatible with the Qliphot. Working with Veles, the god of the underworld, the god of the cattle, and the great dragon and sorcerer, is also compatible with the Qliphot. And working with Moran the Drowner, the god of rivers, who is known to give water and life, but also drown people, and he was offered human sacrifice, more than other deities. Moran is also compatible with the Qliphot. Solar deities and fertility deities, like Dajbog,
in his solar form, or Perun, or Svarog, or Lada, those more solar-like gods are not compatible with the Qliphoth. But all of the Chthonic and underworld deities are compatible with the Qliphoth pretty well.
What can you tell us about the father of the werewolves?
So what I can tell about him is that that conception of vampires and werewolves in modern literature we have regarding occultism is not necessarily accurate. So, word vampire came into English and all other languages in this form from Serbian language, and similarly that can be said for vukodlak or vrkolak too. The reason why it sounds similar to the werewolf is because word werewolf probably originates from Slavic word too. So, according to my personal experience and Slavic lore, werewolves are actually either ancestors who are not buried properly or souls of extremely destructive people. So we are not talking about crazy lunatic transforming into the wolf or wolf-like monster. We are talking about a restless spirit of the dead person who, through some magical operation or extremely destructive acts, managed to build that extremely destructive form of herself. And in Slavic lore, it's not necessarily always clear, is werewolf a physical or spiritual being? My opinion is that it can be both. You can definitely have some physical lycanthropic features if you push it too far. But when we talk about werewolves in magical practice, those are mostly wolf-like predatory spirits of the dead. But I want to talk about other form of wolf, which is present in Slavic tradition and associated with Dajbog too, which is wolf as ascended or elevated ancestor. So, wolf is symbol of ancestor in Slavic tradition, and wolves can be werewolves, like destructive ancestors, or wolves, which are beneficial and powerful ancestors. So Dajbog can be used to approach beneficial or more malevolent ancestors. And he's really gateway into that entire lycanthropic, aka wolf current. Dajbog is according to my personal gnosis. Dajbog the Lame is the chthonic aspect of the Slavic sun god, and this chthonic aspect of the Slavic sun god is actually the first werewolf. So he really can be approached for a lot of things. He can be approached for money, he can be approached for necromancy, he can be approached for protection, knowledge, healing, insight, psychic abilities. He is really versatile power. And chant for calling him is Dajbozhe, Dajbozhe, Bozhe, Bozhe, Dajbozhe, Dajbozhe, Bozhe, Bozhe, Dajbozhe, Dajbozhe, Bozhe, Bozhe. I will send you the spelling of the chant so you can type it on the screen for people to see.
Thank you.
And he can also be really useful to theoretically teach physical shape-shifting. I am not capable of any of that crazy stuff.
Actual biokinesis?
Yeah, but like, I am not capable of this crazy stuff myself, but he told me that's theoretically possible. And two of the Slavic gods actually teach shape-shifting. Dajbog the Lame and Veles teach shape-shifting. Veles, who is the god of cattle sorcery and the underworld, and he also appears as a great dragon, he is more skilled in shape-shifting, while Dajbog is more skilled in necromancy. So if you want to learn like shape-shifting, work with animal spirits, and entering the gates of the underworld, Veles is the right choice. But if you want to work exclusively with the spirits of the dead and ancestors, Dajbog is the right choice. Dajbog the lane, tectonic aspect of the sun god. So they are really connected to similar energy, but they are separate divinities and they are approached separately. The main difference is that Dajbog tends to deliver more consistent results, while Veles tends to deliver more powerful results. But Veles is really known for lying. And it's not just the lore, Veles lied to me multiple times. So it depends on what you want. And in Slavic tradition, gods cannot be bound, so you cannot force gods to do your will or bidding. That's equal to suicide.
Yeah. Well, that was
Do you
great.
have any other questions?
No, that was great. Would you like to put any of your plugs in here?
So, like, I will send you plugs on Messenger, so, like, put them on the screen here if you want to. Or put them in the description of the video.
Cool. Do you offer any services or?
Yeah, I offer consultations. I offer binding of familiar spirits. And I also offer, like, custom rituals. I have a few rituals. I have ritual for psychic empowerment. But in this podcast, we talk a lot about Slavic gods, but I work with demons too. But I wanted to talk about Slavic gods more because it's completely unknown topic in this occult community. So.
Well, thank you so much for your time. This was awesome.
Thank you too. And we can talk in maybe next podcast with me when you have time. I would like to talk more about practical rituals of Slavic sorcery. Because this was more like an introduction. I wanted to debunk some misconceptions, but in next one we will like share with the people a practical stuff they can use. In this one I was pretty short. I shared with you just one chant, but in the next one I will bring much more shit to the table. So.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. You have a great, where are you?
So, I am living in Montenegro, that small country on the Balkan Peninsula, but yeah, I speak about my tradition and I think it's really useful tradition not only for us, but for everybody else in this fucking world. Slavic magic isn't racially based. Everybody can practice it. But I think original culture and tradition and lore should be appreciated and respected. I don't like radical revisionism which tries to demolish all of previous traditional lore and somehow reinvent the spirits. I don't agree with that.
Me neither, and that's why I'm doing this, to get the true occultism out there and not bullshit. So. Have a great morning, I guess. It's 12:16 in the morning for me right now, so it's still the night for me. Because I'm on the East Coastern United States.
So, yeah. But here is around 6 a.m., so I am 6 hours ahead, but thank you for this awesome interview.
Alright, sounds awesome. I actually have a friend in Sweden. I'll ask him if he wants to hop on for the next one.
Yeah, I would like to hear traditional observation of Odin by somebody from the actual area. Because I am sick of, like, Americans explaining to the Swedes what Odin is. Like, what the fuck, man?
Alright, you have a great morning now and a good day.
Thank you too.
Later.
See you later.
Yep.
Thank you.
Bye.